Wait a minute. That's not right. That's right. So today was actually very interesting. Um, for those of you who don't know, I'm actually working on a RPG. What is that? Why is that there? Huh. Interesting. Well, anyways, I'm working on an RPG. Um, a lot of my friends, young and old, really liked Dungeons and Dragons, but they don't like the current content that's being released right now. Now, I don't exactly know why. I'm just repeating what they're saying. But it sounds like whoever is releasing the Dungeons and Dragons content is kind of molding it into something that people don't exactly like, which is weird to me because I know other people who play Dungeons and Dragons and they think it's completely fine. But anyways, so based on that feedback and at some people's requests, some people being mainly Julio, who I train with, I started writing rules for our own RPG. And right now it sits at 187 pages. I mean, that includes, uh, images and whatnot. The images are AI generated. I'm not going to take any credit for those, but um, check this out. Some of the images, like the image quality, just kind of went haywire. Like, look at this. So, if you can see this, and this is actually really cheesy in my opinion, this is what Chat GPT spit out when I asked it to make a collage of human characters. Okay, and again, this is what it spit out when I asked it to do the same thing for half trolls. And these are actually pretty good. These are pretty on point. But when I did some other images later on, I'm trying to find them. Where would they be? Hold on, maybe it's in the other document. Ah, so look at this quality difference. I'm not sure if it's going to translate well, but this image that I'm showing isn't as sharp. It's kind of muddled. It's like somebody was doing a painting and then used a different style. you can kind of see it here. There's like a weird texture that's being used that it just doesn't translate well visually. The original pictures or images were much, much cleaner. Like here you can see it as well. It's like using like I don't know what to call them, splotches instead of clean, sharp lines. Let me see if there's another one. This one isn't so bad. I actually like this one. At night, riding around on a pit bull. That's actually pretty awesome. But you can see it here as well. Like it's just not as sharp, and I couldn't figure out how to fix it. But that's okay. I think that was a, oh no no. This one isn't so bad. I might get rid of this one. It's too. I don't know. It just doesn't fit the theme. Um, for bards, once you get max level, you can take two paths. One turns you into a heavy metal god, and the other one turns you into a basically a hip hop god. So you could do um, you can cast spells with lyrics instead of playing a instrument. But anyways, um, what I got for you guys tonight is that, and we can keep that open because I'm probably gonna scroll through it while I'm looking. Um, folks have been sending me questions instead of posting them in chat. They send me messages asking questions, and I totally missed them from this morning. The stream this morning, of course, I was just playing Helldivers 2 without the boys, just trying to get just trying to get the game to be stable. I've had some issues with only that game with my new PC. Just periodically, it pauses, and then you know, it unpauses itself. It's not a complete freeze. It's like a temporary one. It's very annoying, but I've played around with the settings and I got it to where I think it needs to be. So, anyways, let me pull up these questions and we'll get started. So, the first one I was kind of hesitant to answer because I'm not sure if it's true or if somebody is just trolling me. I'm pretty sure I know who this person is because they train at my gym. But I'm not going to out them yet because I'm not 100% sure. I'm not sure if that's actually their Twitch handle. But anyways, the question goes: I have a friend who's 22, trans, and asked me about a dating problem. Okay, so this is them asking in regard to somebody else. Okay. She likes a guy who also know through BJJ who's 29. They went out for ice cream, but the guy doesn't know, quote unquote, she's trans. How should this be handled? Okay, I should have read this question a little bit clearer or closer before I put that on my list as number one. Um, so this is what I have to say about that. First of all, um, since this isn't your problem, stay out of it. Just stay out of it. Um, okay, so the other two parties involved, it sounds like they both train. It doesn't say if they go to the same gym, but if they go to the same gym, avoid them. I don't know of anybody who's trans at the gym that I primarily train at, and the second gym that I somewhat frequent, I'm not really aware of anybody there who's trans either. But I don't really go there trying to seek those things out or trying to identify people like that. I'm there to train. But for you, my friend, just stay out of it. Just avoid it. That could go south really quickly, and you don't want to be caught in the middle of it. Um, any trans aside, any kind of relationships that form in an environment like that, unless they train at different gyms, it usually doesn't play out very well. Um, there is a old saying about in the business realm, keep business and pleasure separate. That's kind of been muddled in the last couple of years, which is a different conversation. But I say the same thing about training combat sports. Um, don't date where you train. If you find somebody who you do really like and you want to date them and they go to your gym, or both of you guys go to the same gym, um, one of you has to go somewhere else if you really want to make it a good shot at it. Because once something goes south, I have not seen uh, any couple who's been able to keep it under wraps during training time. Um, that's what I would have to say about that. Um, the fact that a trans person's involved really doesn't change anything. The one issue that I would point out that can be very dangerous is according to how this question is written out. Um, so your friend is the trans one. Um, she needs to let him know up front first before they go out. Um, I know that it can be very uncomfortable and that can cause issues. That can cause issues right there, but it's best to get that out of the way. Um, Truthfully, I would recommend to her, if it were my friend and I was speaking to them directly, I would tell them to leave it alone, because that's too much of a ticking time bomb in a place where um, your primary focus should be training and getting better at what you want to be skilled at. So, um, yeah, that's what I think about that. Funny story for you on that note. I had a friend. Was it 7, 8 years ago now? So phenomenal at jujitsu, great at judo. He had a judo background first. He introduced his girlfriend to jujitsu, and she started training with us. And slowly but surely, we noticed that they started not partnering with each other. And then we went over to a teammate's house to watch some UFC fights. And then they started fighting. Not physically, but verbally. They had broken up that day, and there's a lot of jealousy involved. But as entertaining as that was, um, I really thought that was kind of in bad taste. Like I would have hoped that they were adults enough to like keep it under wraps until a later time. But yeah, just not ideal. Hold on one second. Okay. So, yeah, I think I covered that. I really need to read these questions before I put them on my list and talk about them. That one could have spanked me pretty badly um, if I was under different circumstances and well, whatever. Anyways, second question. What are your thoughts about what is happening in Virginia? Um, so I was thinking about that one while I was getting ready for this stream. Let me preface a few things. First of all, my mom's family is originally from Virginia. Um, My dad's family's from D.C. When my parents got together, my dad had just started a career in the Air Force, and they moved to Germany. Well, they moved to like I think Mississippi first, and then Germany. So I was born right before maybe 4 years before they moved to Germany. So I think they went from Mississippi to California, then overseas. But anyways, so even though my mom's family's from this area, I didn't move to this area until I was about 10 years old. My dad was stationed at the Pentagon. So I'll start by saying this. 20 years ago, Virginia was a completely different place. Prior to that, it was an even more different place in terms of Northern Virginia. What's happening is a lot of people are packing into have been packing into what the Northern Virginia area, which is the area around D.C. For various reasons, but the majority of the reasons are a influx of available federal jobs. Now, with that, a lot of the native Virginians, the people who grew up here, have family ties here, um, has started moving away from that area. Um, that I guess you could call that step one. Step two of the change in the area is that a lot of migration has occurred here. Um, from what I understand, there are a lot of people who have contracts to house newly incoming immigrants, legal immigrants. They have contracts to house them in the area. So you get an influx of people who aren't from the area, who don't know the culture, don't know the local history of of Virginia, and then you have new immigrants who are bringing their own culture, their own understanding of things, their own way of doing things, and you pack them all into the same area. What ends up happening is um, the availability of housing goes down, but also the cost of housing goes up because you have a lot of people here who are making pretty good money working for the federal government, or or making pretty good money renting out houses to the federal government to house the newly incoming immigrants. So the actual Virginians moved further into Virginia. So you have a high concentration of people who are effectively um, not tethered to Virginia itself. Like they're tethered to Virginia in the manner that they live here, but there's no connection. There's no the connective tissue that uh, binds people together as a community is not there, and that's one of the other bigger things that I've noticed in the last 20 years. Virginia used to be very community based. No matter where you go, it was like an extended family, even if it was like your neighbors or people that you really didn't know very well. Everyone was very friendly. Everyone treated each other that way. As this influx of people has of new people has increased, that sense of community has disintegrated rather quickly. Give you a prime example. Last year at Halloween, when I was taking my kids around, the amount of people who answered their door for trick or treating and said that they didn't didn't what do you call it? Not celebrate, didn't celebrate Halloween was kind of staggering. In years before, like 10 years ago, it was probably one or two houses in our neighborhood. Last year, it was closer to 10 or 15, and it was a little bit disappointing, especially for the kids. But you know, it is what it is. It's just a difference in the local culture. But moving along from that, I will say that the biggest issue recently has been the outcome of the recent election, and then the outcome of um, this redistricting attempt. that has been going on, and is a result of things that have been going on nationally. Um, let's talk about the election. Now, the governor of Virginia ran as a moderate. She made promises from that perspective. So, a majority of people that I've spoken to voted for her based on that image. It was, a lot of folks did not want a extreme politician running Virginia, which we didn't have. I don't think Glenn Youngkin was extreme at all. What they wanted was somebody more moderate. Um, what they got was the exact opposite. They got somebody who promised and presented themselves as a moderate, but was actually an extreme politician with extreme views. Um, with that being said, that also pretty much pegged her for being extremely dishonest. So right off the bat, that there's a level of trust that's just not going to be there. Um, with that in mind, so I saw somewhere, and this ties into what I said about the change in Virginia in the last 20 years. The majority of the politicians that were elected this last cycle, none of them are from Virginia or have ties from Virginia. Um, the governor is from New Jersey. I think the lieutenant governor is from originally from India. Um, Jay Jones, I believe, is from Richmond. So let me retract what I said initially. I'm going to say very few people had ties from Virginia. So Jay Jones is from Richmond, um, which arguably would put him into that group that came in the past 20 years from that new group of people. Now, honestly, I haven't really looked into his background. I do know that he said some things that I don't like. It is what it is. Um, and et cetera, and et cetera. But the whole centrist image that people were expecting, especially from the governor, just went out the door. So what you have is you have a group of people who have no familial ties to the state, who are now running the state, and we were sold the image of them being centrists. And what do they do when they get into power? They propose what was it, 50 different bills that increase taxes on what I would consider ridiculous things. I think there's certain things that you should not tax. I'm not going to get into that list. You guys can find it later. If you want, if you want me to look into it, maybe a little bit later in the stream, I will. But nobody's asking about it right now, so we're not going to go into it. But she's done a lot of things that cause people not to trust her. Some of the most strict gun control packages across the nation have been implemented. Um, Virginia has a very deep uh, culture around guns. It's a very safe culture, and as I found out, no matter how deep into Virginia I went, away from Northern Virginia, it was also a very welcoming culture. Now, I don't know. That could be because I'm just a very personable guy, as I've been told, or it could be because I'm a 200-pound dude and I'm not really afraid of anything or anyone. I'm not very intimidated. Actually, I really haven't been intimidated by anyone or anything in a very long time. But it could just be how I'm carrying myself. But I have not been to a gun store, gun range, FFL, um, or anybody involved in that area, no matter how deep into Southern Virginia I go to, who has ever treated me poorly or looked at me sideways. With that being said, the gun bans and other gun-related legislation that she passed would pretty much kill that ingrained part of Virginian culture. And the problem is she doesn't understand that because she's not from here. The state politician that uh, drafted the specifically the gun ban legislation was an immigrant from Bangladesh. Again, he's not gonna understand or know how ingrained. I don't like saying gun culture, but gun culture is in Virginia. Um, it's something that they don't know, and they're not willing to understand, and that's the issue that I got. Plus, she did not run on. Hold on. Yeah, I'll be right back. Damn it. Hello. Hello. There we go. There we go. All right. So, um, where was I? Sorry, I had to step away for a second. Oh, well, a little recap and then I'll continue. So, um, the governor, the lieutenant governor, and a lot of the newly elected politicians in the Virginia House and Senate, um, are from that new group of people who moved to Virginia. They're not really Virginians. Like, they're not people who are from here. They're not people who have a familial history of the area. They don't understand Virginians. If they did, the gun packages that they set forth wouldn't have even come to mind. The the new taxes that they suggested. Now, granted, they didn't vote on all of them, but they're still there, and you can see their intent. It was something like 50 different taxes that they proposed, and a lot of it was on in what I would consider silly things, like things that should not have an extra tax on it. Just the way that they govern is just out of sync with the rest of Virginia outside of the Northern Virginia area. And it's not in line with the moderate message that they put forth during the election. And it's just as simple as that. Um, the gun ban itself, for example, the way that it's written, it's going to ban 70 to 80% of the majority of available guns right now. Spanberger, I believe, was even quoted saying that she was going after bolt action rifles, which is and I'm not 100% sure that's true, but that's what I heard. I haven't looked into it yet, but if it is true, that's going to damage the image that the left would be leaving hunters alone. I just realized that this cave rat image, their eyes are in their ears. Whatever. Um, I got sidetracked. But additionally, a lot of the other gun-related legislation, in my opinion, is just a way of punishing people on the right, who are the majority of the gun owners in this area. Like their safe storage laws. On paper, no problems with that. The problem being is that it's unenforceable. The only way it would be enforceable, the only way you can enforce that is by sending someone into your house and have them check. That just doesn't, and I don't think without a warrant you can do that. The other way that that can be enforced is if something occurs at someone's house, like some sort of incident, crime, whatever, and the police have to go in and check, do an investigation. If they see that, and they see that your guns aren't stored up to code or whatever, then that's the other way that they could check. But if they're not loaded and if they're not loaded, there's no ammunition around. They're basically just big paperweights. So I don't understand. Like, it's just another way of stabbing somebody while they're down. Like, it's just another avenue of punishing their opponents. Like, even the transportation, um, even the firearm transportation law that they enacted. Like, one of them was that you had to have a locked container bolted or welded to the frame of your car. Like, first of all, if you did that, that would reduce the resale ability of your vehicle. And second of all, I did a little bit of research on that when I heard about it, and I couldn't find a single body shop that would offer that service. Now, I'm not saying that they would offer that service in the future, but just on its face, like, first of all, how much would that cost? Second of all, finding somebody who'd be willing to do it, and third of all, what do they mean by locked container? And I don't remember if that was defined, but finding one that you could bolt into your car and then still be able to have room for your seats and be able to access it is totally a totally different question. I know in my four door, if I were to bolt something like that to my vehicle, it would have to be in the trunk. And if it's a rifle case, that's gonna basically ruin the storage capability of my trunk, and I wouldn't be able to store it in the front. I wouldn't be able to have it bolted in the front. Now a pistol box shaped sized box I could do underneath my seat, but again, accessibility would be really difficult. It's just not feasible. On paper, it sounds like a good idea and something that could be enacted, but honestly, that's only from the point of view of somebody who doesn't really know what they're talking about. You know, and they don't know what they're talking about. They're most of these folks don't know anything about the subject matter. But anyways, what was the other thing? And not knowing the subject matter, I think, can be further understood by the whole redistricting thing that they did or they attempted. In Virginia, there is a laid out process in law and the Constitution where if you want to enact a constitutional amendment, there is a specific process that you have to follow. If you don't follow that process, then the vote on the amendment is null and void. You know, and people were accusing the courts of nullifying the vote on that amendment, the constitutional amendment for gerrymandering specifically. They were saying that it was shot down on procedural purposes, and they made it sound like it was like a technicality, even though it is a technicality and it is procedural. It is also a violation of the Constitution, and if we're going to be a state or nation of laws, we have to follow those procedures and processes. So even though their vote did go in their favor, I'm not going to go into what the margins were, but it did pass per the vote. Per procedure and per the Constitution, it was an illegal vote. Now, when that all played out, even before we got to the Supreme Court's denial of review in the case, I found it hard to believe that the administration's lawyers didn't point that out to them before the whole thing was enacted. And come to find out, at least one lawyer, I think it was a former attorney general. Actually, I can't remember if it was the former attorney general or the current one. I'm going to say it was the former attorney general. Actually wrote a letter, an opinion detailing that what they were going to do would be illegal. And apparently it was ignored. But that's not the disgusting thing. And this is where I kind of show my hand a little bit. The disgusting thing is after the initial court ruling, which put a stay on the outcome of the amendment, the outcome of the vote on the amendment. After that initial ruling came out, the people who were criticizing it were not talking about the content of the ruling itself. They were not talking about the opinion that the judge wrote out. They were solely talking about how, the Republicans found some backwater judge, and that's the guy who you know, they searched for a judge that would give them what they wanted. No, if you read the opinion, he lays out how this vote was illegal. I believe there were 7 points, and it was a pretty solid opinion. He cited laws, he cited the Constitution, he said why, and then there you go. When it went to the Virginia Supreme Court, from what I understand, they only ruled on one of those points that the initial judge laid out. And that one point in itself was enough to put a nail in the coffin, so to speak, because that one point was indeed a violation of the Constitution. Now, I do recall reading the majority opinion a little while ago. It had to do with the ruling of there's a specific procedure where there has to be a vote, an election, and then a second vote, something like that. I'm not an expert, but it's something akin to that. So it had to be a session where there was a vote, an election, and then a second session, and then a second vote, something along those lines. So what ended up happening was the Virginia Supreme Court found that that procedure or that process was violated. They used for the first session, they used a special election or a special session, not special election. They used a special session that was dedicated to something else, like something finance related, I believe. Those special sessions have, per Virginia law, have to be specific. So they got dinged there. And then there was another requirement, and I'm getting things mixed up because it's been a while since I read this stuff and I don't have it in front of me. There was another requirement that had a 90-day notice period, and before the amendment could be voted on, and that was not that that was not followed. There was an argument that there was a disagreement on when voting started. Some people say that voting started when early voting began, or voting started on the actual election day. But that kind of muddies the waters, because does an election start when early voting starts? Because some people would say yes, some people would say no. Or do those votes get submitted and then kept for election day, which would be two totally different time frames. But either way, that was violated. Now, that cost something like $60 or $70 million to be to ultimately be shot down. So it was a huge waste of taxpayer money. And the reason why I bring that up is it was either sheer incompetence. They were either in a big rush to get that through and they just didn't pay attention to the procedures of things, or they just went through it and didn't know what they were doing, and their attorney general just kind of dropped the ball. I'm thinking maybe it was a mix of both. Maybe a third option, like somebody in their administration like pushed them to do it. Somebody with a lot of clout, maybe. Who knows? Maybe it was a little bit of all three. But the thing is, it's not a good thing for Virginia, because this was all a reaction to what was going on nationally, and people were citing Texas. But the problem is, again, when people cite Texas, they're not talking about the court case that triggered that action. They're not talking about the opinion on that. They're just making it sound like the president said, "Find me more seats" or whatever. But then when you look into that, the sole source for that quote was a person who had knowledge of the conversation where that was stated, who was not allowed to speak on the thing and had to remain anonymous. So how there's no verification that that conversation actually happened. There's nothing to verify. All we have is a phantom who said something that he heard from someone, and I don't really find that to be a very credible source. But apparently people do. But the crazy thing is, a lot of people who are using Texas as an excuse to gerrymander Virginia don't even know that. So ultimately, and I believe in this case it's intentional, what you have is a bunch of people who want something but um, honestly don't know anything about it at all. They don't know the who, the what, the where, the why, or the when. They know very, very, very surface level information, which is, in my opinion, not borderline misleading. It's very misleading. And when you look at the way that the governor, lieutenant governor, the AG, and the various left-leaning politicians in Virginia are talking about the result of the gerrymandering decision in the state of Virginia, they're not talking about the opinion. They're not talking about of any of the cases. They're not talking about the opinion of any of the cases. They're simply just. It's like they were handed a script. We're upset about the outcome of the election. The Virginia voters voted, and their voices were heard, but now it's being nullified by a rogue court. And their further response to that is rumors of them wanting to pack the court. I'm just like, this is very, very much just starting to look like a huge power grab by what's starting to look like extremely incompetent people. The AG had to hire outside counsel from California to do his litigating for him regarding the gerrymandering. I'm sorry, if I hired a lawyer who had to hire third-party lawyers to represent me, I'd fire him. But that's just me. Anyways, I started answering this question. I got interrupted, kind of rambled a bit, but I hope that answers that question. Virginia is a mess right now. That's what my thoughts are on it. And the last thing I'm going to say about it is, you have two distinct groups of people in Virginia. You have the people who lived here, grew up here, and have history in the state, and you have the people who did not. And it looks like, based on voting patterns, they're equal in population, and that's where we are. All right, so let's see what else we got here. Got 12 more minutes, so we can get through some more questions. Follow-up question to the previous one. Can governments really be trusted? Actually, that's a rough question because it depends on two very big factors. One is that you need to hire a majority of people who simply want to serve, perform their duties, and govern. That's it. You don't want people who are looking to do all of those previous things, maybe not all of them, but are in it for power, prestige, and to enrich themselves. Because if you get that second type of person, what's going to happen is transparency is going to go out the window. You're going to start seeing legislation that is not good for the constituents. They'll try to paint a pretty picture on it and be like, yes, it's good for everybody. In the long run, it really won't be, but they'll make, $100,000 off it. Just putting that scenario out there because that's what I believe that happens. I'll give you a very good example. There was a town in Virginia, a small town, where the governor and city council brokered a deal for a data center in the outskirts of their town. They did not like that. So during the next election, and there was transparency issues, like nobody, they don't know when the vote happened. They don't know when the open discussion, like meetings where there's open discussion. What is it called? board meeting, council meeting, something like that. There's no meeting about it, from what I understand. It sounds like the council and the governor just did a backdoor vote and completely disregarded their own process. Now, again, let me quantify. I haven't fully looked into that situation, so I may be getting some details wrong. But this is what I know specifically from what I remember about that particular incident. Every single person who voted for that data center during that next election got ousted, completely replaced, every single one of them. Um, in terms of trust, what happened in that town is a perfect example of how not to be in terms of being a politician. Those people obviously did that backdoor vote in order to enrich themselves, and a data centers are not good for small towns. They suck up energy. They take up a lot of water. Um, I don't know what the deal for that data center entailed, but you can't you can't do something like that to a community and expect no backlash. You know, what if they didn't get caught? This data center pops up. People are like, "What is this thing?" It's a data center. Who voted for this? And the damage is already done. So it's good that they got caught there. Um, I hope that the second set of local politicians don't make that mistake themselves. I hope they stay true to what the intent of their roles are. But that's the problem. Like these roles, these political roles, there's too much power and money in it. So people are going to, fall to the dark side, so to speak. Give you another example. The the board of education locally here. The head of the board of education, I forget what the proper term is. They make something like a $250,000 salary as the head of the head of the board of education or board of supervisors, something like that. Um, the average salary of the teachers in this area is way less than that. I don't understand how the teachers in this area get paid so little, but the board of supervisors get paid so much. And the board of education the head of the board of education gets paid so much. I'm going to retract my statement on that. I do know why. It's because people in this area, and I suspect in other areas nationwide, are using school boards as a springboard to kick off their political careers. And if they make some money off of it, why not? That is what that's what I'm convinced of. You know, um, I was listening to some people who were running for the school board the last time there was an election, and I'd say like half of them alluded to political aspirations, or cited something political, like something political nationally, as part of the reason for getting into the school board. Had nothing to do with the kids. Had nothing to do with making the kids' education better, school experience better. It was blah blah blah. I'm a Democrat. I'm a Republican. This is what I stand for. Go team. And it's like, well, what about the kids? What are you going to do for the kids? But nah, nothing. So, can you trust that though? Can you trust someone who's just out for political power to move forward with a political career to be in a position like that? That's the problem, you know. But anyways, long story short, yes and no. Can you trust government? If you have good people in there, yes. If you have people out for power and money, no. No, you can't. All right, let's see. Well, I'll do one more question. Yeah, let's do a religious one. Do you think God forgives everyone? All right. Um, Let me preface this by saying I'm not the most religious person. I go to church. I used to disdain church. Well, I don't really go to church regularly. Let me backtrack a little bit. Um, I used to disdain church. I used to disdain religion. But as I've gotten older, I've seen a distinct difference in people who are religious and people who are not religious, personality wise and conviction wise. Conviction? I think that's the right word. But, ooh, I did not remember this set of images. Anyways, um, from what I understand, God has in the Bible several, what do you call it, sins laid out. And to my understanding, if you seek forgiveness from God, you'll get forgiveness from God. So, in that respect, yes, I believe everybody, um, I think God forgives everyone from that respect. Now, what I suspect happens is that there's a bit of a catch 22. Even though God will forgive you, I think that the sin that you're guilty of, oops, uh, may still get you punished. So it's kind of like breaking up with someone, you know. Hypothetically, let's say you're dating someone, they cheat on you, they, steal your puppy, etc. Eventually, you're going to forgive them. So you, yeah, you forgive them, but that does not mean that you want to be around them. It does not mean that you want to be social with them. It does not mean that you want them in your space. It does not mean that you want to help them with anything. It does not mean that you're going to go back to being buddy buddy with them, like pre-dating them buddy buddy, platonic buddy buddy. No, it doesn't mean that that's going to happen. So one could argue that even though in that case that you've forgiven them, the punishment is that they are no longer allowed uh, your friendship or being in your space or being associated with you. Um, I would suspect that God would be the same way. You know, my Lord, I sinned against you. Oh, well, you are forgiven, my son. Even though I don't know, raided this cathedral and murdered everybody there, yes, I forgive you, my son. Oh, okay. Oh, my lord, why are these angels trying to kill me or, you know, give me some sort of punishment? And I could see that playing out, you know. Like, I don't think, I, if you believe what people say and what pastors say, God is infinitely smarter than us. He knows that if somebody sins, that I don't know, maybe it's a case by case basis. Like some people, you can be forgiven and God will know that you're not going to do it again. No further punishment needed. Maybe the next person that sins or does something punishable or that could lead to punishment is the opposite, and that person needs the punishment to better themselves. Maybe that person gets punishment. I'm not really sure, but that is a good question. All right, the hour's up. I'll talk to you all later. I hope anybody who man, those things are ugly. I hope anybody who hears this gets something out of it, and I'll be back later. Have a good night.